Hello and welcome back to another episode of Quick Tips. In this video, I'll be showing you how you can use Citadel paints in your airbrush. And I don't mean the Citadel Air range, I mean regular old Citadel paints. Now for this tutorial, you will need the following items. You'll need an airbrush connected to a compressor, a paintbrush, a pipette, some Citadel paints, airbrush cleaner, and also some water. So the first task is mixing the right consistency. Now what I want to do is I tend to use some water for mixing my Citadel paints. Rather than just using a airbrush thinner, I find that water does the job just as well. Now I'm going to be using some distilled water, deionized water, or battery top-up water. It's basically the same as regular water, but it doesn't have the usually the minerals in there that can actually cause damage to your airbrush over time. So I've just put a few drops using my pipette into the actual holder of the airbrush. I'm going to be bringing in some of my paints. I'll be using Gawthor Brown for this. Doesn't really matter what paint you're using, but the steps are pretty much going to be the same. So you want to use your brush, just take an amount of paint like so, bring in your airbrush again, and just use the paint inside the airbrush like so. Now you want to just keep adding small amounts of paint until you get a consistency that's similar to a semi-skimmed milk or like a skimmed milk. So still a little bit thicker than water, but still quite runny in its appearance. You can see here we've got roughly the same kind of consistency we want. And then once you've done this, you can bring in your miniature. So now that we've got the right consistency of paint in the airbrush itself, we now want to actually bring in the component that we're going to be painting. Now I've just got a piece of paper on the background here so you can see better what I'm doing. So what we want to do is want to roughly put around about 20 psi through this for a base coat. So just have a small amount going through the airbrush like so, just so you can roughly guess the consistency is going to be correct. And then we want to bring in the piece itself. Now I recommend using these miniature holders that I showed you how to use in a previous quick tip video, and also some latex gloves as well. It stops you getting paint all over your fingers. So we just want to very lightly apply the base coat over the component like so. And I like to build up my base coat in a few layers. So I'll leave this first layer to be fairly thin and just build it up slowly over several layers. As well as the regular Citadel paint, you can also use Citadel Shades in your airbrush as well. Now I've just decanted some from the pot and I've put it into this, and this is Airbrush shade in here, just using my pipette. And as you can see, I've just got it on low pressure again, just to make sure it just has a very mild kind of spray there. I'm going to be using this over the surface. This will just act like a regular wash, so just very light dusting over the surface at low pressure, and that'll just pull into all the recesses and really help to bring out the detail, as you can see here. Now the reason why it's actually better to apply it via an airbrush is you get a much more even coverage of the wash over the surface, and it's less likely to stain and get tide marks over your paint job. Now once you finish using your airbrush, you'll now want to make sure you clean it out thoroughly. This stops any paint building up inside the actual airbrush itself and preventing use in of other occasions. So what you want to do, if you've got any excess paint in there, I usually just empty this out into an old cup just to reduce the amount of paint that's left in. So you just got a small amount in here. Now I found there are two particular cleaners which are excellent for getting rid of Citadel paint. One of these is the Life Color Cleaner, and the other one is the Medea airbrush cleaner as well. So I use either of these, doesn't really matter, but if the Medea comes with a little spout itself, so it's a lot easier to apply. So just apply a few drops into the top like so, and then bring in your paintbrush, usually an old paintbrush for this one, and just agitate the mixture a little bit. Make sure you bring up some of the paint residue from the bottom of the reservoir like so. Once you've done that, you have to just bring in a piece of towel and just start applying some paint through there, just to make sure the actual thinner is coming through correctly, and this will make sure all the inside of the actual airbrush is clean. Another trick is to place your finger over the end of the airbrush and very lightly apply air so that you get bubbles in the reservoir like so. And you can increase the pressure on this just until you get a good little bubbling. Now what this will do is actually remove any chips that have accumulated inside here, and then flow them back into the reservoir itself. So it's quite a simple and effective method of getting rid of your paint. So once you've done that, you can then empty out some of the paint, so we won't have as much paint left in there this time. And then you can just keep applying small amounts of airbrush cleaner so you're completely sure that no more paint's coming out of the airbrush. And once you've done that, I tend to just bring in another little bit of cloth and just dry the inside of the reservoir like so. So that's it for another episode of Quick Tips. Do let me know what you thought of this tutorial and if you would like to see more airbrushing tutorials and videos in the future. Be sure to subscribe to be kept up to date with all of my future content, and also check out both my Facebook and Instagram pages, which you can find links to in the description below, to be kept up to date with all the projects that I'm currently working on. And finally, if you'd like to support me in making more videos, you can do so by checking out my Patreon page, which you can also find a link to in the description below. So until next time, thanks for watching and goodbye.